things. Why is it already Saturday?
I'm sure everyone is wondering that.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone is wondering. Well, what are they wondering? They're wondering, how is it already Saturday? Or why is it Saturday? Or what day is it anyway?
That's pretty much me. I write every day, so every day bleeds into every other day.
Yeah, I don't have that problem. I have to know what day it is. Because if I forget one day, then someone is going to be left someplace wondering where their ride is.
I think I may have had that happen when I was a kid a couple of times. Like, where is my mom?
Where did she go? But now there's phones and texting, and so I can go, I'm sorry I got caught up. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Just wait.
It's, the joys of remembering back to the past. You've received a collect call from I'm ready to be picked up, Mom. Do you accept the charges?
Click.
The joys of payphones.
Payphone. I haven't seen a payphone in forever. Oh.
Well, folks, here we are to talk about writing and related topics, and there's no Paul.
There is no
I'm
Paul. Paul has abandoned us. He had stuff to do today. How dare he?
important stuff.
Ugh, like life stuff.
He's probably getting drunk somewhere.
Nah. Well, it's a possibility.
Can't rule it out.
No, no, no. Schrodinger's bar. Oh.
He didn't tell us what he was doing, so, it's some super secret project that we can't know anything about. But he's been busy. He's had his life torn up for the last month or two, so I don't doubt that he's got stuff to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes you do need to take a day or 3 or 7 just to kind of step back and get things
I think he
realigned.
said something about having a weekend he needed away from Matt Baker. I'm not sure what that means really, but you know that's obviously something personal to him.
Mm, can neither confirm nor deny. Oh,
So we were
goodness.
talking about what we could do while Paul is gone, and we'll get around to talking about what we've been up to for the last week. But what could we do without Paul here?
Let's see. We can give him advice that he cannot refute, and he'll have to listen to it. And then he'll have to remember and make notes and comment back
Ooh.
the next week.
Are we going to restrict ourselves to writing advice, or are we going to give him, advice on other aspects of, life?
We only have an hour. I think we better restrict it to just writing.
I was hoping to get into some comments on his wardrobe. I mean, really.
I say nothing. I am not one to be giving anyone fashion advice. So, because let's face it, y'all's t-shirts are way cooler than mine.
Oh,
So,
I disagree. I disagree.
oh no, if it's not some bizarre, sports cosplay thing I'm rocking here in my hockey jersey, it's a hoodie and jeans. So, I have
What
way
have
cool
you been up to
t-shirts.
for the last week, V?
Oh, let's see. Auditions, recording. I've been recording Sports Romance, which is so much fun. It's so well written. For my pseudo, and auditioning. And I have 2 more. Yeah, I have 2 more scenes for the last round of edits on my sci-fi space opera outline. I'm still really bad at finales, but I'm trying to figure out if what I came up with is too hokey. And I think it's not too hokey as long as I leave breadcrumbs at the beginning that it's a plausible solution and it doesn't just come out of the blue. But yeah, I think I get to haul somebody out of fire suppression foam and hope they live. Maybe. What have you been up to?
I've spent most of about a week and a half clearing out my office, scrubbing the floors, getting them all cleaned up, moving in the new bookshelves, having someone else move them in, having someone else assemble them, and then me relocating all of the books and everything back to this room. And it's interrupted my writing schedule. So I've gotten a little bit of writing done in the last 2 days, but I've only just gotten back into the swing of things.
Yeah, I mean, it looks gorgeous. Behind you, it's all nice and neat and organized and
Until the
all.
cats knock it off.
Well, yeah, everything's neat and organized until cat. Hello, Leo. That's one cat.
One! Ah!
There shall be more.
Castor has found that on the bottom shelf where the hardbacks are, that he can get over the books and into the space behind them and use them for his own hiding spot. And then he comes out and knocks books everywhere.
So he's either a clandestine librarian or he's figuring out how to haunt your office.
I'm going to vote for haunt.
That seems far more likely.
I'm pretty happy with the work that's done, but I've got to get the book I'm working on finished. So putting up the cat furniture is going to be a project that I either have to wait a couple of weeks to do or I only do a little bit at a time.
Is it something that can be a reward for getting so many words or pages done?
I'm not sure because the very first part of it is going to be taking some cutouts of the bases of these various things and then pinning them to the wall to figure out if that's where I want to put everything before I drill holes.
Yeah, that would be a thing. Because, yeah, you don't want to put stuff up and go, nope, that's terrible, and grab all the putty, fill in all the holes, and that's a lot of cat furniture.
That's a lot of cat furniture. Most of it's going downstairs because that's where the majority of the cats live. But I'm going to put a bunch of it up here. Behind me, you can see I've moved the cat tree back in. I'm going to either in that little space of a corner or over here next to this side. There are a couple of poles that can be mounted that have adjustable paddles that cats can climb on. So I can make like a stair stepper to get from the floor up to the cat highway.
Yeah, and that cat highway is going to include the top of the bookshelf, I take it.
It is. That's what I'm calling the top of the bookshelf. It's the cat highway.
You're going to need, beds up there for rest stops along the cat highway, or?
It's tall enough to where I think I could probably put a bed mounted to the wall above it.
But would it be contested?
Oh, of course it would be.
All cat beds must be contested.
All cat beds must be contested. That's how this works. But I've got to figure out what I want to put where and have enough cat beds for everybody. Well, probably more than enough for everybody since they're just going to fight over them.
Yeah, they're going to fight over them, and you have to have at least 2 empty, because if everything's full, then if there's only, one gets up, and then they decide, no, I don't want that one, then it'll just be, cat Jenga of rearranging things.
Of course, I have to worry about how much weight they can hold because sometimes I have cat beds with 2 or 3 cats in each bed because they decide that's what they want to do.
Of course, you must have the cat puddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Matt says, isn't putting up, well, let me stick it on the thing here. Isn't putting up cat furniture on par with writing War and Peace? Probably not. It's probably more along the lines of The Return of the King.
I can see that. I haven't read that in forever.
When I was a kid, I read the trilogy every year. It was sort of like a thing that I did from middle school on for probably 15 years, at
Wow.
least 10 to 15 years. I'd check them out from the library and I'd pile them in the bed. And after I was done, I'd read them and it would take however long it took.
I think I've only read through them once. And that was when I was put on bed rest for my first child. So I pretty much went to the doctors and I thought, okay, everything's manageable. They'll just send me back to work. And they went, oh, no, you're calling the office now. Tell them your maternity leave starts now. You're going home and you're going to lay down for 3 weeks. And I burst into tears and went to the bookstore, as any sane person does,
As one does.
as one does. And that was about the time that the movies were coming out, so it was easy to find those books. And so I grabbed all three of them and holed up in my bed and binge read the trilogy in about a week. So I have to go back to those. I'm very bad at rereading stuff unless it's for work. And then I'll read it like 5 or 6 times.
I'm the same way. I don't, nowadays, I don't have the time to reread everything. There are a few things that I would like to reread. Maybe I'll go ahead and put my Perry Rodan collection in order and start reading it.
I think the only thing I used to reread were when I was into it was rereading Harry Potter. And I would reread the series every time a new book came out. But and what else? Oh, the David Eddings's Belgariad and Malorian. I've
Weird,
reread those a couple times,
weirdly enough, I got into David Eddings more for his Sapphire Rose stuff.
which I've never read.
I thought they were amazing. The three books of that and then the Tamil trilogy that followed it with the same characters. I read all six of those books and I've still got them on my shelf and they were excellent. And I was like, yeah, I learned things about writing characters with personality from those books.
He does that really well. I think with all of the books he writes, but I'll have to put those on the list of things to read.
Matt says his favorite reread was Heinlein's Glory Road. Totally different book reading as an adult. I can see that.
I don't think I ever read it.
I read it, but it's been a while.
Hmm. Yeah, there was a good chunk of time where I didn't have time to read, or I didn't make time to read, and or I'd get into like one author and I'd just binge everything. Um, there was Madeline L'Engle in high school. Well, high school was Madeline L'Engle and David Eddings. Um, because Madeline L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time book is actually part of a trilogy.
It is.
And there's another, she writes about two families, and one family is set in current time, except it's like the 70s, I think. And then the other family that's featured in A Wrinkle in Time is a time traveling family. And there are a handful of characters in those two series that cross over. So they show up in both, and it's really interesting. But I wound up reading both, kind of both tracks and how they wound and intersected.
What was the one character's name? Charles. Was it Charles Thomas?
Charles Wallace.
Charles Wallace. I could never
Charles
remember his middle
Wallace.
name. Tesseract Charles Wallace.
Tesseract. That was like one things I remember reading that book and how they explained it. It was like, first, one dimension is a dot, was a line, two dimension is a square, three dimensions is a cube, fourth dimensions are time, and fifth dimension is tesseract. Okay. I remember that. And I think what killed me is my daughter hates that book. She hates A Wrinkle in Time, and I'm like, no, how can you?
Tastes vary.
They do. taste vary, and it's not her thing. She's not a science fiction person, which is fine.
Everybody has their flaws.
Yeah, as long as you're reading, that's really all that matters.
Matt says, Book of Two Halves, the hero's journey, and then what the hero does afterward. I'd pretty much forgotten about the second half before rereading, and then enjoyed it all the more the second time. I know that Heinlein wrote one of his books where he wrote another book that was basically the same events told from a different point of view with a different ending. Or maybe it was just a different
Oh,
ending. I can't remember, but I picked it up somewhere and I haven't read the second one, and I don't even remember which other book it was attached to. But I read pretty much all of Heinlein's works when I was younger. It's just been a very long time. I love his children's books. His children's books are amazing.
see, I don't think I ever read them. I think it was I read like the classics. So I read like Black Beauty and Anne of Green Gables. I read all of the Anne books. And I read lots of Madeline L'Engle. I read a bunch of Sweet Valley High and Babysitter's Club because child of the 80s and 90s. And then, oh goodness, I didn't read that much when I was in college just because for time and I was doing theater. And then when I graduated and I was working at a shipyard in Mississippi, I lucked out in that the apartment complex I lived in was literally right across from the county library. And so I could walk. And so on nice days, I would walk to the tiny, 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 tiny library. Um, and I think I wound up reading a bunch of Anne Rice that year. And that was interesting because it was, oh, okay, this is really, really wordy. Huh.
Anne
All
Rice
right.
can be wordy.
Yes. Oh, and then a lot of Tom Clancy. I read a ton of Tom Clancy. So
He is even
wordy.
wordier.
I know. I know. But I think one of the things I took away from his writing was he was very good at um, circling back in a story, that kind of spiral sense of storytelling with characters and point of view and different tiny plots. And then finally it all comes together at the end. Rainbow Six was like that. I really liked Rainbow Six, I remember. Oh, yeah. Yes. The Secrets of the Heinlein Juvenile
By
by,
our friend J. Daniel Sawyer.
yes, who I don't think we've name checked him enough. Can we? Can you name check J. Daniel Sawyer enough on
I think that
DRS?
we've probably been lacking recently
I
for
know, I
more name
know.
checks would be good. This was part of a Kickstarter that he did. I read a pre-release version of this and gave him my thoughts of what I thought coming away from it. And this is definitely a scholarly book on dissecting each of the books of the Heinlein Juveniles and talking about what kind of story it is and what types of not genre but writing styles and themes are incorporated into it. And it goes into depths that I'm like, I had no idea about any of this.
Like some MFA level
Yeah, that's exactly what it
exploration.
is. I didn't know what I thought I was going to read when I read it, but it was definitely more of an academic book and a scholarly work than I expected it would be.
I think sometimes as writers we need that though.
Oh,
Sometimes
I'm not slamming it for that.
no, no, but some people might be like, "Oh, well, I don't want to read like an academic thing to learn about writing." Well, sometimes it helps. If you like that sort of thing. I will say that. Not everyone nerds out to that degree. But yeah.
Let me see if I could find it because he's talking in here when he does each one. First, he gives a breakdown of what the story is that covers a number of pages, and once that's done, he digs into the themes that are involved with that. There, we're mentioning Horatio Alger's formula. What do we got else there? Yeah, it's just stuff,
Good
stuff,
stuff.
good stuff.
Good stuff.
Sadly, when he did the Kickstarter, he opened himself up for doing more work on the Kickstarter than he probably should have,
Oh,
because he did the Kickstarter for this book, and as one of the Kickstarter rewards that he did not think that they were going to reach, he said he would write a book on some of the similar size book on some of the Heinlein sagas, I believe it was. And
oh,
they met the goal, so he has to write an entirely new book to go along with this as a Kickstarter reward, as opposed to just being a separate Kickstarter.
wow. That be careful what you wish for. So there we go. I'm grabbing the URL for that book and I'm gonna throw it in the live chat for those who might be interested in reading. So okay. Oh, there we go. I think if is it directly linked on, there we go. Even better. There's the link directly to his website, so you can, rather than go to the large monolith, you can just go to his website and purchase the book.
Yeah, he put a goal out there that he would write a book called The Secrets of the Heinlein Epic if it reached $8,000 on the Kickstarter, and it hit 8,200.
Yeah. So he may be out there right now researching and
Oh, he
drafting.
is. The last couple of times I talked to him, he's still working on it.
That's like some PhD level research. I mean, damn.
Well, we've gone 20 minutes into the show, and we
We
haven't given
have.
Paul one bit of advice.
Do you think he's actually waiting for advice?
Waiting for it? Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
If he's actually listening. He was probably like, oh yeah, 15 minutes in, they haven't said a damn thing. Nah, I'm
Oh, he knows how
fine.
this works. He probably is going to skip ahead to the half hour mark, figuring we're going to start talking about him about there.
So we could
So,
just
if we were going to pick an area of writing or the writing business that we think Paul needs to hear unsolicited advice about, what would that be in?
oh gosh. See, I would say advertising and marketing, but we'd need somebody who can give him advice. And I know I'm not qualified to give anybody advice on advertising and marketing.
Well, one advice that I've given him in the past on marketing is that he kind of needs to pick a primary genre and at least stick somewhere close to it.
Yes. I think definitely in this day and age with any kind of creation, whether you're writing, whether you're like me and you're narrating, um, you know, what are you known for creating? And you can't just say books and expect someone to go, "Oh, yeah, that's great." It's like you don't go and someone says, "Well, what do you want?" Ice cream. All right, there are 31 different flavors. Am I just supposed to guess or do you actually want to tell me what you like? So he's, yeah, I think probably sticking to one grouping. I think it's easier if you do. I think like science fiction and horror and thrillers. I think those, it's easier to have a brand where you still keep everything under the same name. If
Yeah.
he was doing stuff across really, really different genres, if he was doing something in fantasy, or if he was doing some, flavor of romance, then we'd have to help him come up with a pseudonym and marketing.
What he's doing, though, is writing science fiction horror or thriller horror. If you really want to dig down into some of it, in the most general
Mhm.
of terms.
Right. So he needs to market to people who primarily appreciate horror and who appreciate horror, but not necessarily pure, bloody jump scare nonsense, but something that has, a thriller, suspense, sci-fi, and then branch off of that. Huh.
But it's hard. His
It is.
I'm not gonna slam his writing style because that's
No.
not my bag. But he writes things that don't easily fit into niches.
Well, it they may not fit easily into a niche, but a lot of the things that he writes are elements that appeal to many different people. And so if you like science fiction, but you're like, I don't know if I like horror, there's enough science fiction in there where you can go, ooh, this is really cool. And I'm kind of into the horror aspect on this. Or you can have someone who goes, well, I like horror, but I'm generally not a sci-fi person. Then you can go, ooh, this horror is really good. And I like the way it's presented in the context of science fiction. So, in that sense, I think he's one of those people who has a real skill for going to, for blending genres. You know, the Reese's peanut butter cup. Is it chocolate? Is it peanut butter? No, it's both, and it's delicious. Oh boy.
There are 3 cats in that bed, all piled on top of one another.
Two black cats and one tabby cat.
2 gray cats
Oh, two
and
gray cats.
1 black. Gizmo is upstairs visiting.
Oh. Poor Gizmo. Tolerating
He's
all the children.
he's 15. They're like 1.
He's a good boy.
He's tolerating a lot.
Oh.
Now, I think if there was a way to use, picking words to
Mhm.
separate things is very important. You could say that it's science fiction suspense for the science fiction crowd, and
Yes.
you could say it's horror in the far future for the horror crowd. And
Yes.
it would literally mean the same things.
So maybe one of the bits of advice would be to, you know, look into some A/B advertising
Yeah,
and
I've
see
heard of
which
it.
resonates.
I have never tried it, so but picking a
There's
different image to go with those particular advertising
mhm.
and targeting for those separate groups, it's aiming for groups that are more pure in what genres they're doing, but it's still aiming them back toward the same product.
You know what I wonder would be another good way to try it? Alternate covers.
Hmm.
Because that's a big thing in romance. Right. I'm not sure if it's right now, but it's definitely been a big thing for a while where um, authors will release. I feel awful. I don't have a clean. Well, not that it's not clean. It's just let me grab this. Um, authors will release kind of a whatever the bare chested version So,
All right.
so this is for those just listening. I'm holding up my copy of Bitten by Death by author Holly Roberts. She's another one of my authors, and I recorded this series for her. She's got multiple covers because not everybody wants to have a a series of books on their bookshelf with a bunch of shirtless male models. And so she's got alternate covers that are just very stylized. I think they've got roses or crystals, just darker swirly colors in the title and her name. And other authors have followed suit, and some people they'll get one cover over the other because they would prefer one on their bookshelf than the other. And sometimes people don't necessarily want to advertise what they're reading. You know, there's they don't want to deal with the stigma of, "Ooh, I'm reading this and I'm enjoying it." Okay. So, but
So
with the
does
genre,
she
I wonder.
sell two different books?
Um, I on her website, I don't think I don't know if the copy that I have, if that cover is still out there. I think it's the other more stylized one because that may have been what sold better.
But at some
Um,
point, was she selling side by side version A book, version B book?
Maybe not physical book, but ebook and seeing which cover worked. I'm not sure if that's I'm offering up as an example of you can have different covers and see which one sells better. Now, and while I think the covers, especially on the black, are phenomenal, and I think they do really well to, evoke that suspenseful nature with the horror because, tentacles. I wonder if there is something I wonder if there's a bigger divide that could be done with the more sci-fi horror stuff to have a cover that is more horror based and a cover that is more sci-fi based,
That would
and then
certainly
see
be
which one
easier to
did.
test with advertising.
Yes. So, and then the other thing that keeps coming up with authors is getting on TikTok and advertising that way, but that's a lot of work.
Facebook and Amazon ads generate a lot of the advertising that people do. TikTok has some buzz going for it, and there's some other places as well. And I'm not going to say they don't do well, but it seems like if you're going for TikTok, you're going for a younger audience because Facebook trends older and TikTok trends younger.
Yes. So it's going to depend on knowing who your audience is. Who's reading your books? Who do you want reading your books? Are you trying to attract a younger audience? Are you trying to attract an older audience?
Maybe I need to spend time, going through Mark Dawson's author's advertising course that I
Mhm.
purchased, that I have, so I can go through and making up notes of things we could talk about for an extended series on advertising.
Purchasing helpful materials and actually using helpful materials are two totally separate things.
That's
It, it,
true.
it's like crafting supplies. Purchasing them and using them are two separate things.
I
See my
have
storage closet for examples.
I have a lifetime membership for workshops and lectures with Dean Wesley Smith, and I'm being groomed by the cat that needs grooming.
Yes, Terry is currently being styled by
Mm-hmm.
Leo. Leo himself, I have been told, needs a bath,
He
and
does
and
badly.
none of his furry four-legged roommates have volunteered to assist.
They don't want to get that on their tongue.
Yeah.
But in
So
any case, I was distracted here. I paid to get the lifetime access to all of the workshops and all of the lectures, and guess who has not taken very many of them at all?
yeah, that's you're not the only one who does that. I have done this with some narrator stuff. I'm like, oh, I really need to go in and take some time to, apply the knowledge. Or I'll get the book and I'll read it, and then like I need to do this, and I get like 70% of the way done, and then something else pops up. This is me in newsletters right now. Leo is very, very diligent in making sure that Terry is clean and styled. It's a shame that he can't do it for himself. Oh,
Well, I think that's good advice we can give him there.
yeah.
Let's see.
What else?
I don't feel qualified to talk about his writing style because I've not read a lot of his things. So I don't have any advice specifically for that.
I don't either. I mean, I tend to listen. I listen to and read stuff after it's come out, just in terms of catching up. But I will say that Paul's stuff is this. It's the sort of storytelling that the Mighty Ginger and I listen to when we go on road trips. Like if we've got to be in the car for a couple of hours, and if the kids have their own, their headphones on and they're listening to something, I have no problem. We'll cue it up. It was actually funny because where were we going? We had to drive down to, it was a couple weekends ago. We had to drive about an hour and a half south to help the eldest son start to move out of his dorms for the summer. And so we drove my car down so that he could put some of the big things in, and then we could drive it back. And we're like, oh, well, doesn't Paul have another book out? Because my husband reads a lot. He loves reading on his phone. I can't stand reading on my phone. But I can tell you, he has caught up and read pretty much every book you've written, Terry. He's read most of everything that Paul's read. And he will still be the one who will bug you about the next Humanity Unlimited, which I think is really funny.
I would totally like to write that book.
But
I am so far behind in other things right now.
Exactly.
It's not even funny.
Exactly. And between you, me, and everybody listening, he would totally understand about being behind with many things that need to be done because, programmer. But we're driving. He's like, so is Paul another book out? I think so. Well, where's his podcast? I'm like, sweetheart, you need to go to Patreon and subscribe to get it. Oh, how do I do that? So driving down I-95 at 70 plus miles an hour, I'm only half caffeinated, and I've got my husband's phone, and I'm making sure that he's subscribing to Paul's podcast so that we can listen to his stuff.
I'm exercising.
Yes. Terry is currently doing tabby cat.
Chonk tabby
bicep
curls.
Chonk curls. That's what they're called. So I mean, his writing flows really well. He has very definite characters. He's very good at creating a character, a distinct character, and keeping that consistent throughout the story. And he's very good at building suspense and carrying that through. And this is going to sound weird, but I think some people are going to understand where I'm coming from. I can read, and by reading or listening, I can read his stuff and my analyzing critical brain turns off. I can read for enjoyment. And that's opposed to something where I'm reading it, and even though I'm trying to read for enjoyment, I'm finding issues. And that's just because I'm a, cranky, critical wench when it comes to certain things, and I will own that. but I don't, my brain will turn off and I can read for the story. And I'm not figuring out like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Something's wrong, or this would be better if. I don't do that with his writing. I don't do it with yours either. So, but I've had some instances where I have, and I'm like, turn your brain off, just go through, find the story.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
One thing that I do know is he has recently moved from doing a lot of outlining and rethinking of what he's doing as he's working to writing into the dark without an outline. And I don't know how much rewriting he does on the fly at this point, but I kept lecturing him in the past that you just need to let your first draft be what it's going to be and not go back and try to re-edit it while you're in progress, because it takes you out of creative mode and into critical mode.
I can see that. Yeah, you have to. I think that's the corollary of you can't edit a blank page. You have to get some finished before you go back and change things. You have to know where that ending is, not just where your map says it should be, map being your outline, but get to the end with the story. Then you can go back and fill in the holes and fix things. Um, but and I mean, it's possible to get stuck in constant outline mode. It's guilty.
And if you switch back and forth between creative and critical
Mm-hmm.
voice in your head, it may be hard to get back into that creative mode.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering for other people that do that, if you use too much of your critical thinking skills about what you're writing, does that stunt the creative side as you're trying to push through? Sometimes I think it's better to just go ahead and just vomit out your creative story, flaws and all, and then deal with it when you're done with it, all editing in one pass. Well, not necessarily one pass, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, rather than trying to mix and match.
I think so. I think you've got to do it in cycles. You have to get to the end before you go back. You can't kind of shortcut and get halfway and go, oh, no, let me go fix these other things, and then come back to the same point and then go, that needs to, you know, be better. And then, go halfway back and then right forward and then halfway because with all of that, you're never advancing. And advancing is the only way to finish.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I kind of agree with that.
yeah. Let me see if I can highlight things. So Matt points out one thing that may affect that is Paul's also a programmer, and writing code you tend to write and test as you go. That's likely to be a hard habit to break.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us who are used to having to having to present that final product and tweak as we go, it is hard to finish before we restart.
I started out as a writer backwards because the first thing that I wrote was a novel. Most people start with something shorter,
Generally, yes.
generally so. But I started out with a novel. And then I preceded it with, had more novels following that, and I never looked back. I've written short stories, but they're definitely not my go-to forte.
Yeah, I would try to write short stories and I would only tell like half of a story. And then people are like, where's the rest? Well, that's isn't that the rest? No, there needs to be more. So my short story was a novella. But
Yeah,
I
I can see
think I
that too.
yeah. But the stuff that I started out with was fan fiction and it was
Yeah,
terrible.
most beginning writers start with things that are terrible. That's how it
Yes.
works.
Yes. And it just proceeds to become less terrible over time.
That's true. That's certainly been my thing. It's become less terrible. Those first 5 novels that I wrote were under a pseudonym and posted chapter by chapter. So I would write the chapter and then go ahead and do what editing it needs to be done, maybe after I'd written 3 or 4 more chapters down the way, right before I posted it for commentary. So the editing portion was separate from the other because I wasn't dealing with a live story at that point. I wasn't trying to change things and tweak things that I was doing. I was doing the editing of something that was already done right before I posted it, even though the novel wasn't finished. And maybe that would be some advice for Paul, is not to edit what you're hot on right then, but save your editing if you feel like you simply must edit something while you're doing it. Finish your writing for the day and then go back 4 or 5 chapters and do something back there.
I can see that. I mean, one thing that I started doing with my current project, because I am a compulsive outliner, and I felt like I'd get to a point, it's like, oh, I need to fix this now. Part of my editing process, I'm still editing an outline, but rather than make corrections, kind of the intermittent path was I went through and I didn't make corrections, I wrote questions. And it was like, what is, for example, in, I have a paragraph there that says, and I highlighted, as another system failure has cut off access to the area. Okay, that's great, but it's kind of vague. And I want specifics because my thought is if I can get the outline done, then I can just go through and write, because I have very limited time to write. But if I sit down and have the outline, I can, write from start to finish on that chunk. Rather than take the time to go, oh, now I have to put on all these details, I just wrote a question. How much damage does the initial explosion do? What is the actual cause of the cascading failures? And then I went to the next page. So rather than stop and try to fix everything at once, it's like, okay, here's the punch list. Answer this question, answer this question, answer this question.
Sometimes those questions can slip through and bite you in the butt, though. I'm thinking of a specific incident that happened to John Ringo.
Oh, this is good.
It is good. Because he went ahead and wrote, I don't even know what book it was that he wrote, but somehow one of those questions made it through to the product that got printed and published.
Oh.
Basically, a scene was missing, and all it said in brackets was, insert big explosions here.
Oh, well, I can promise you that will not happen with mine, because it's literally highlighting it and writing the question there. And then answering the question is, I have another notebook, me and my terrible old school nonsense, where I handwrite the question. So I will avoid the John Ringo bracketed explosion mistake.
That's funny stuff, but I would hate to have it happen to me.
Oh, I know.
I'm sure his audience, though, they just laughed. I'm sure they just laughed.
They're like, this is a kind of lazy, but sure, we can insert an explosion here. Carry on.
He came up with some unique ways to deal with zombies. You might appreciate some of the ways he came to deal with zombies.
Do any of them involve, like, liquid nitrogen?
No.
Oh, man. See?
They're attracted to light and noise. Okay. So he took a cargo container, one of those shipping containers, and put lights and sirens on the top of it with the doors open where they could come in the front. And basically, it was a giant Ginsu machine inside that chopped them up and threw them out the back.
Disco Ginsu.
Pretty much. Nice. Drop it out there and let it do its business off by itself.
Nice. Yeah, I do appreciate that. could even set it to music now that I'm thinking about it.
Actually, I don't think it was sirens. I think it actually was music. Loud
Let,
music of some type of heavy rock, heavy metal sort of thing that attracted them.
let the bodies hit the floor.
That might be it, actually.
I would not be surprised.
I would not be at all surprised.
It seems like that's the go-to, zombie apocalypse song across many genres. Oh, so Matt said, so fireworks are the way to go? Yes. Yes, I think fireworks are also good debate. Amusement parks, Zombieland. That's that's another interesting movie to watch. Up there, there's a
Cat Highway.
cat highway. There's a floofy cat on the cat highway.
Up, up, up. What you
Oh
gonna do,
no.
boy? What you gonna do? You gonna come down? He's thinking about it.
Yo.
He's gonna jump to that one on the window. One of these days, he's gonna make the suckers come loose when he jumps on there.
He's going to jump to the suckers. They're going to fall. That's going to startle the cats that are in the bed below. One of them's going to jump onto the other ledge, startle the cat that's up there, and it's going to be a Rube Goldberg mess of, feline confusion.
Well, I have seen those happen before. He's not going to jump while I'm looking at him, so
Of course
back
not.
over here. That's obviously not what's going to happen. But I came home one day and came in through the garage, and all of the cats were gathered inside the door to the garage waiting for me. And there he goes. And they're all sitting there doing their business, and one of them kind of half bumps into another one and startles him, and he bounces sideways and bounces off some furniture with a loud thunk, and cats shot every direction. You have never seen anything more exciting than in excess of a dozen cats flying off in every direction.
Literal fur flying. That's awesome.
He says,
Probably
eyes on here now.
Oh, he's regally sitting with those little front paws all
I
perched over.
I is in charge of this place right here.
Oh, yeah. I'm abandoned. There's nobody. No cats here. None. Every so often I think about I should move things here to have, a cat in view. But I would be afraid that if I put the tower that's next to the window over here behind me, they would try to get on the top of the booth.
Well, yeah.
I don't want that.
Obviously.
Because, yeah. It's when they're really bad storms, they'll try to hide behind the booth in the corner, and then you're taking a Swiffer handle and just gently nudging to please get out.
Well, we're almost running out of time, so I think the last topic has to be, what would you advise Paul to do when it comes to maybe grooming or his clothes?
I think that he needs to lean into the whole, horror branding for the black, and he needs to grow the beard out to where he can braid it and put little almost extensions in it that look like tentacles.
That would work, have a regular beard with just a tentacle coming out of it.
No, I'm talking a couple, just twist down, maybe get some little dark black beads on it, and yeah.
Well, they've got the fake extensions that people can have to extend their hair. You could go ahead and get a tentacle that you could weave into there.
True. A couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Get a couple, even get the mustache going down, little bits there, and I think it would work. Definitely good, convention author meet and greet fashion.
So convention clothing here, should we have shirts with our book covers on the back or something? Is that too outrageous?
I don't know. I don't know. I think. I think it would be better if you had the T-shirt of somebody else's cover instead of advertising other people's work. And then it can be like a whole scavenger hunt. Like, you found this, like, start with this. You have to find their book covers, and then you find their book covers, but their T-shirt being worn by this author. Then you have to go find, the book covers, on the back of, this other author, and then, keep going around. Get like 20 authors. It's a whole thing.
But what would be the prize?
The satisfaction of having 20 new authors, and
what I'm saying though, for the person doing the faith, when you find author X, does he have to give you something? Does he need to give you a card with some special cover on it, a sticker, something? There needs to be something to encourage people to make the jump from author to author.
Pins, badges.
Pins or badges would work.
Ribbons. Start collecting like the whole badge ribbon thing. You have found such and such.
I know my wife found a kind of a stretchable thing that you could get printed that goes around your luggage. So she was talking about getting a book cover put on something to go on our big luggage as we went to Vegas.
Oh, I like that. I think Matt's got it right. A convention T-shirt bingo. You have to get a selfie with each author showing their new book.
That could be fun.
That would be fun. I like that.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left, Matt. Matt, do you have any suggestions for Paul? Because Matt and Tom are out there, and maybe somebody else is lurking as well. If you've got a suggestion for Paul, we would love to hear it.
Mm-hmm. We are crowdsourcing this one. Of course, they're probably like, ooh, you're taking advice? How fast can I type? We have 3 minutes. How can we fix everything?
We couldn't fix it if we had 3 weeks, but, that's all right.
3 months, 3 years. It's a work in progress. Constant work in progress. I wonder if he's listening. He must not be listening right now. If he was listening right now, he'd be like dropping comments someplace.
Probably so.
Yeah.
He's got nothing, Tom says.
And Matt says, I may well, but I wouldn't say it in public in case my mom sees it. Well then.
Well, I think that pretty well sets things up for Paul. We've given him all the good advice we can. Now he's going to have to come back and tell us how wrong we were next week.
Absolutely, because what else would we do?
Exactly so. Mm-hmm. So let me go ahead and see. It's been a long time since I've wrapped up one of these shows.
Oh, boy.
We'll see how much I remember.
Okay. Go for it.
So if you would like to send us a note about what Paul needs to do, whether it be clothing, personal hygiene, writing, anything at all, the sky's the limit. Send a note to show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find Paul on Mastodon at Paul_E_Cooley at VYRSE.social. You can find me on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group, where I monitor all of the madness, which there's not been enough madness. I think I need to do something to cause more madness.
We totally need to cause more madness.
We need to do that. You can find us on youtube.com/DRS podcast. And please hit the subscribe button so you get notified whenever a new episode comes out. If you would like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/DRS podcast and buymeacoffee/DRS podcast, where every little bit of support helps Paul keep the gears running for the mechanical side on this. Software, hosting, all of those sort of things. And if you support at the $10 level, then you get your name read on the show. So let me see what I've got here. Ooh. I've got Tony L. Joy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Isabel Cushy, and Tim Niederreiter. I hope I didn't miss anybody because I don't actually have access to the Patreon account, and I wrote down what they were last week. So
look at you.
I know. I was thinking ahead.
Wow.
And even if you supported a lesser amount than the $10 amount, every dollar helps, and you get access to the after show that we'll be coming back to in about 10 minutes, where there's no telling what we're going to talk about. There's
Who knows?
literally no telling.
But there will be cats.
There will be cats. And to close things out, we have to mention our coffee addiction, because we have one. Right here is where we get it solved with Corpse Coffee. So go out and get some dead in your cup. And with that, I will go ahead and say goodbye. Veronica will also
Bye-bye.
do the wave.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
And we will see you next week, unless you're coming to see us after the show. Bye-bye.
Later.